started as a layoff threat. And then I got all this motivation in me from my old college professors telling me that if you become a freelance writer, you're never going to make any money. So for me, moving into freelance writing, from almost getting laid off to side hustling to being demotivated to finally hitting six figures in my business, has been quite the whirlwind. And I want to make sure that we're going over a few critical things on how that happened, how you can get started, what things to think about, and how you can kind of move from either zero clips or zero experience or side hustler or full-time person who wants to become a full-time freelance writer into your freelance writing business. So we're going to go through a couple of things. This is number one. When I'm thinking about starting my own freelance writing business, I feel like a lot of people think that the journey should be easy, but it actually looks a lot like this. It's a huge mess. And I feel like a lot of times that freelance writers think it should be this straight, perfect line. And it's not. It just isn't. So when I started my freelance writing business, I was understanding that I was coming from my full-time job where in March 2013, I was told I was going to lose my job. So when I was getting into freelance writing, when I got my first job, right? So when I got out of college, it already took me 10 months to find this full-time job. It took me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of job applications to get it because I ended up graduating college right in the middle of the recession. So I finally got this full-time job. And about a year later, they were like, hey, remember how you got this full-time job? You're going to be laid off in 3 weeks. So I was like, oh shit, I need to get started. So when I was getting started on that period, I was like, I'll just get on the platforms, which was one of the biggest mistakes that I made. So I had this kind of push in the right direction from potentially losing my job. And then about 15 months later, I left that full-time job to become a full-time freelance writer. So I was working on the platforms that whole time. I started on Odesk and Elance, which are now Upwork. And that was like a whole journey. I had my identity stolen. And then when my identity was stolen in 2015, what ended up happening was I moved into actually learning how to run my business. So for basically the first 2 years of my business, I did everything wrong. I worked on all the platforms. I basically treated it like applying to a full-time job, which is not what you want to be doing in your freelance business. And then I started learning how to write a pitch. I started learn how to send an LOI, a letter of introduction. I started to figure out how to actually put all the pieces together. And then as I'm kind of growing my business, I take a couple of classes and courses to kind of learn how to do it, but it wasn't quite in line with where I wanted to take my business. So I started taking a lot of smaller jobs. I thought that the way to change my business was to take more work, more small work, just take more of it and you'll make more money. Instead of understanding that I should be moving to higher projects that make more money, that are slightly more complicated than writing 10,000 blog posts, I was like, just write more. And that's just not how it works. So after I got my identity stolen, after the whole platform thing, after almost losing my job, then I burned out. So in 2018, some of you know this story already, I worked every single day, 10, 12, 14-hour days from April to September with 2 days off. Sometime in August, I took about a week off and it didn't really help at all. So then I crashed and burned it September. I was sleeping about 13 hours a night for about 2 weeks. And then I had to start kind of folding my business back in when I was kind of getting out of burnout in late October, November. So after that, I finally made the realization that I can't run my business this way. So I started to realize what types of clients do I need? I can't be taking these small jobs, $200 here, $500 there, $400 there. I have to move into these bigger projects. So 2019 was when I actually started realizing how to run my business the right way, was when I actually started clicking all the pieces of the puzzle together. And then we had COVID. And then COVID hit in 2020. So when I was finally getting my feet under me and finally kind of figuring shit out and putting things together and actually not burning out and not trying to take on 100 jobs, COVID ended up happening, right? So when COVID happened in 2020, all of the taps turned off, right? All the taps turned off and I didn't have any work for many, many months. I have other friends and other freelancers who made their best money yet during that time. I had nothing. So I kind of had to deal with that. I had to figure out how to actually get marketing, when things were going to turn back on, how to figure things out. And then after doing all that, I hit six figures in 2021. So since 2021, right, that's when my six-figure business started. But before that, I had this wild journey of taking forever. It took forever, 10 months to get my first full-time job. Then, then I almost get laid off from that job. I magically get kept on. I start my freelance writing business on the platforms. I leave my full-time job about 15 months later. I get my identity stolen on the platforms in 2015. I start over again in 2016, learning how to actually do pitches, send LOIs, learn about freelance writing clients, actually figure out how to do the work the right way. I end up burning out severely in 2018. 2019 comes and I'm finally putting the puzzle pieces together. COVID hits in 2020. In 2021, I had my first six-figure year. So it's been a wild ride. It is definitely more of this crazy diagram than it is a straight line. It's very much winding around and going to all the places and being crazy rather than just it being perfect all the time. And the second thing is more about moving your freelance to full-time. So if you're a side hustle copywriter or a side hustle freelance writer or a side hustle content writer, this is how we're going to move basically our freelance writing business from a side hustle to working on it full-time. And I want to make sure I make a distinction. So a lot of times freelance writing is like an umbrella term. Content writing is more like helpful content, how-to content, educational stuff, blog posts, thought leadership, articles, reported journalism stuff, can be case studies or white papers, and copywriting is stuff driving sales, right? So copywriting is landing pages or sales pages or email drip campaigns. It can also sometimes be case studies and white papers, but usually the copywriting part is the landing page of the sale of the case study and the white paper, and the content writing is the case study and white paper typically. So when we're thinking about freelance writing, it's freelance copywriting, it's freelance content writing all up in one. So when I was doing that, I had several different things that really helped me. When I was moving over there, I made sure that I had money saved up. So for me, in my full-time job, I made about 30 to 40K. Like that was kind of the range I ended up making. And as I was moving along, I had enough to pay my bills. So I saved all my freelance writing income. That kind of helped me go full-time quicker. So when you're side hustling, make sure you're saving at least 3 to 6 months of income before you jump into full-time freelance. It gives you some space. It helps you have money in case something goes wrong. And it also gives you some freedom to be picky about your jobs, which leads into my next piece. One of the biggest mistakes I made as a side hustle freelance writer was not being picky about jobs. I took 50% rate cuts. I took a ton of small jobs. I worked at like $15 an hour or $30 an hour. It was crazy. I wish, and I tell my students this all the time, whether they're runway students or whether they're Wealth Lab students, I tell them that that's the biggest mistake. If you are moving from your full-time job to freelance, you should be ultra picky about your clients. You should be ultra picky about your prices because you have freedom to do that, right? You actually have money already coming in. So as you're kind of moving through these things, learn more about who your ideal client is. Learn what kind of revenue they make. What types of projects do they have? What are kind of the long-term relationships they want to have? And what are things that they're working on, right? Those things are so much more valuable because if you're getting paid well and you're working on these really awesome projects as a part-time side hustling freelancer, right? Then you can move to full-time and expand that and scale that a lot quicker because you already know what you're looking for. You already know the types of clients to go after. You already understand how to get the work, why this client, and you can expand it so much faster. And that was something that I think was a big mistake I made. I was not picky at all. I just took whatever and then said yes to everything and took rate cuts, which is dumb. So if you're moving from side hustler to full-time freelancer, make sure you're picky about your clients. Make sure you build up that savings. Make sure you actually learn the important things, right? Learn the basics. Learn the foundations of a good LOI, letter of introduction. Make sure you're learning the basics of a good pitch. What's the difference between an LOI and a pitch, right? Make sure that you're kind of figuring out how to run your business in a way that works for you. Don't burn out. Don't take too many small projects. I think that beauty of having a full-time job is that you have kind of more stability to test things in your business, to think of things more as an experiment, and to be more particular about what you take on. As a side hustle freelancer, you should be taking on maybe 1 to 2 projects. As a full-time freelancer, you want to kind of hit 3 to 5 projects. So we don't want to pick too many things that are overwhelming, too many things that make us burn out. We want to make sure that we're kind of hitting like 2 projects max because we have to do our full-time job. And if we take on too much as a side hustler, we'll just burn out. It'll be too much. So if you realize that there's only 2 projects that you have space for, you have to be picky about that time, right? That also means being picky about prices. That also means being picky about what clients you keep and what clients you let go. And it also helps you understand how to run your business in a sustainable way, but also a scalable way, so that when you go full time, it's a lot easier to ramp up your LOIs, to ramp up the projects that you're taking on, to understand who your client is and target those more often, and then understand your agreements, right? How long do I have money? How long are my contracts? How is this working out? And then the beefy part, how did I actually scale from nothing with 0 clips, 0 clients, 0 experience to actually hitting 6 figures? So when I'm thinking about my business and I'm thinking about what I normally tell my coaching students or my Freelance Writer Wealth Lab students or my Runway students, right? I want to make sure to remind them that everybody starts with 0 experience, 0 clips, 0 anything. They have nothing. Even if you're coming from a full-time job and you just jump off your full-time job and go freelance, you still have like things that you have to work out, right? Everybody starts with 0. Everybody starts with 0. And when I spent too much time comparing myself, right, I would spend time being like, well, they have more clips. They have decades more experience. They've written for all these great clients. Like, why would someone hire me? What are you going to do? How does that thought process help you? What ends up happening is you're like, are you going to quit? Are you going to stop writing? No. Are you going to give up on your dream? No. So none of that stuff matters. It doesn't matter that other people have more experience or clips or whatever, because the goal is that you want to move forward with your writing, right? Worrying about what you can't control, what everyone else is doing, isn't helpful. So when you're thinking about it, everybody starts from square one with 0 stuff, and everyone has skills. So I've had coaching students, freelance writers that start in high school, and I've had people who start in retirement. So I've had the full gamut of all different types of students, and I've also had people who start in college or people who are starting in their mid-40s. So I feel like a lot of times when we're doing this, it's more about feeling insecure or that imposter syndrome cropping up, rather than remembering you have skills, right? You have skills to bring to the table, whether those skills are someone who's in college or high school and they're bringing these 4 types of skills, or someone who's moving from the full-time sphere and they're bringing these 4 skills. It's identifying that you're bringing skills in these specific skills. So those skills are more important than having a giant library of everything. Your job is to be smart about how you portray your skills. Your job is to go get those clips, to pitch those ideas, to get some articles, or to send some LOIs and get some clients. Your job is to identify what are your good clients, how much money do they make, right? What types of projects are they working on? And honing in on that process is way more important than worrying about 0 clips or 0 experience. So I always try to remind people of that. And when I was kind of coming up, I scaled by making sure I did this business analysis. So if I could go back and I could take 2019 Mandy and put her in 2013, I would have built my business so much faster and so much better, and I would not have to eat all the fruit from the dum-dum tree, right? So 2019 Mandy, when I was putting all the puzzle pieces together, that was more about understanding my business analysis. So you need to look at your business. And this is something I see as a big mistake, is like, I will see people who do their freelance writing business. They're just like, I have toast with butter every day, toast with butter, toast with butter. And they don't actually analyze, do I like this kind of bread? Do I want a different type of toast? Do I even want butter, or do I want jam, or I want something else? You have to look at, are these clients working for me? Are these clients where I'm taking my business? Are they heading in the future? Are they long-term relationships? You shouldn't be riding the same rusty, dusty bicycle all your career. There should be changes. So you have to do a business analysis. And I always kind of keep this number in mind. Kind of your minimum viable client is $5K a year. 5 to 6K is about $500 a month. That's what you need to be hitting. If you're kind of coming up, if you're starting as a new freelance writer, totally fine. Shoot for 5K. That will be your goal. But if you're someone who's been freelance writing, like a lot of my students, for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or even 20 years, some of my students have been freelancing for quite a long time, and you can't get out of this rut, you need to analyze your business. What clients need to go? What clients are actually better fit for you? Who actually has a budget? If you look at your clients and you see what's going on, you do a business analysis of their revenue, the types of projects, their publishing schedule, or understanding what types of content go out, you can then identify a better client. You can say, okay, these clients that make 10 to 20 million are too small. They don't have long-term relationships. They don't end up having a lot of content. I need to go bigger revenue, and I need to look for these types of projects, right? So we're kind of making sure we do this business analysis, that we have things in place to understand what's a better quality client, who am I actually shooting for, what kind of revenue do they make, what projects do they do, and we're also looking at what types of things am I growing to. Do I want to scale my business by working less hours and earning more, right? Fewer hours, more income. Do I want to spend more time with my kids? Do I want that time to go on vacation? Do I want that time to work on other passion projects? So that leads me to a diagram that I often talk about. And this is like my favorite diagram. And my students always love this one because I feel like it's a goodie. It's an oldie but a goodie. So here's the diagram. As we start, we always start up here. Everything takes all our effort and it's a lot of work, right? But then as we kind of grow as a freelance writer, we hit these other points where everything doesn't take as much brain space. It's not as difficult. It's not as trying. It's not as hard. Then we finally get to this place in our experience level with working with clients and projects and different types of content where we have all this extra space. This is the arrow. This is the space where you can scale your business. After you get through the hard part of like learning who's my client, who's my ideal client, what types of projects, how do I actually send more LOIs, how do I get more space? Now we actually have more space, right? Then you can do whatever you want with that space and your work doesn't take a lot of effort. It's always kind of this consistent effort over time, but it's not more effort, right? So this is this diagram that I think makes a lot of sense when we're scaling, especially six figures. There's this long period of time, right? So basically for me, that was, 2013 to essentially 2020, where I was trying to figure shit out all the time. And then 2021, I hit six figures. It's this. I actually had more space to figure out who it was. I did my business analysis. I got through this part of spending all my time and effort figuring it out. Then I actually maximized it, right? So I'm going in here and I'm saying like, I know I need to send this amount of LOIs. I know I need to send them to these types of clients. I know that I'm going to get this type of response rate. And I know I'm going to work on these types of projects. Then we actually have time and space to work on those projects. We're making more money in less time. We have more space in our schedule. And this is what I've seen with my students, whether my students are Wealth Lab students or Runway students. So Runway is my 5-day fast track class. And with Runway, that is going through your business 5 days, different types of pieces that you need to focus on in your business to ramp up, to level up, whether that's learning how to do your LOIs better, having the right template, identifying those high up clients for good, meaty projects that pay well, onboarding your clients, actually getting the work done. That's your fast track class to get ramped up and actually put some juice in your business. My Wealth Labbers that I'm doing right now, I have my fall class, is a 10-week class where we really dive deep into the material. So I feel like when we're looking through these things, we have to know that stuff. We're doing this business analysis. We're not only realizing what LOI templates work, we're not only realizing the types of clients we need to go after, but we're really thinking about what's our next step. Does this client belong in our next step? Or is this going towards where I want to be? So we really have to think about those things as we move through our business. And if you want to learn more about this, if you want to learn more about building a higher earning business, or if you want to actually get your time back and scale, if you want to work on projects that you really care about for clients who have great missions or who actually have the money to pay you well, I would love to have you in Runway. If you go to mandyellis.com/runway, you can check it out. It's my 5-day fast track class. It helps you get out of a plateau. It helps you get past 30 to 50K. It actually helps you start your business on the right track. And it goes through all of the essentials that you need to know as a freelance writer to level up, to really get your business raring to go. And if you have any questions about Runway, you can always send me an email. If you feel like this was helpful, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about building a freelance writing business you adore that actually attracts your dream clients and helps keeps your schedule full, subscribe. I'd love to hear more about comments too. So if you have anything where you feel like I wanted to do this in my business and this is how it worked, I'm always interested in hearing how other freelance writers build their business, how they actually went through the process. So if you have any tips or tricks to share them below. Or if you have anything that you feel like, wow, that was a really interesting part of the video, or I wish you talked about this more, drop it in the comments below. I also want to make sure I tell you a little bit about next week's video. Next week's, we're going to go deep dive into freelance writing side hustling. How do you actually do it? How do you add it when you have a full-time job, or how do you just add it into the mix as you move through different parts of your business? So as a freelancer who side hustled and full-timed and worked through the platforms and all that stuff, we're going over how to handle that, whether you're copywriting, content writing, or magazine writing. So I want to make sure that you know about that to check it out next week. And I hope you have a great day.